the same kind of, with energy and curiosity and interest. Do any of you have any solutions for this? 5 hour or whatever? A lot of Diet Coke? Those of you that have been on super days, how do you deal with it? Please. Okay. My impression is that's one of the hardest things, is to give the same answer to the same question 8 times in a row, talking with different people. And how do you make yourself seem interesting 8 times in a row? And the rule that I try to use is, you obviously never saw Nancy Reagan, President Reagan's wife, but maybe you've seen a picture of her, or you know about her. But when he was speaking, she would look at him with a look of awe or astonishment or love or respect or whatever. And it made her seem like she was listening to the speech for the first time. And she was just, what a wonderful speech. In fact, she'd probably heard it about 500 or 600 times. And internally, mentally, she's rolling her eyes as he speaks. But what she showed in person was, each talk was fresh each time. And that's what you have to learn how to do in a super day. If you're going to go through 4 or 5 or 6 people in a row, is you just act, as President McKay used to say, whatever thou art, act well thy part. Part of it is acting. You have to stay alive and alert the whole time. But hopefully it's not completely, because it's something you would like to do. And I guess one thing that I would encourage you to do is spend enough time getting to know companies that if you decide you really don't want to work there, you don't come for an interview. And it really hurts the program if you guys get offers and then you turn them down for really casual reasons, because then you lose the respect of the recruiters. And I guess what I'd say is there's sort of a crutch, but I have to be careful how I respond to this. But students sometimes use their religion as an excuse for getting out of things that they don't know how to get out of otherwise. They'll say, well, we prayed about it as a family and decided this doesn't make sense for us to do. Or we did, and I'm not questioning anybody individually, but collectively, I think that process is misused. I don't know if any of you have seen it happen or felt it happen. When people choose another offer because it's the one they wanted in the first place, but they didn't want to go without an offer, so they accepted another one and then swapped out of it. That's, just makes people cynical. Consistency. Each person you talk with may ask you similar questions, or half of them may be asked to ask you certain questions, and another half may ask to do a different set of questions. And you need to learn to answer every question with energy and enthusiasm, but also giving the same answer every time. Because you don't realize how small the world is and how much people will talk and compare and share what you said, and you have to be consistent. And the last one is transparency. And we've actually had a lot of problems with that this year, with students not being transparent, with telling employers that I'm your number one, or telling multiple employers that they're number one, trying to get an offer from them. And that hurts not only the student making the comment, but it hurts all those that have been trying to build the program for the last 2, 5, 10 years, and it hurts the reputation of the school. So one of the things we're looking for is ways to help you feel like you should have confidence to not be clever, but to be transparent, and not trying to be very straightforward and honest. You don't need to be foolishly that way and say things in poor ways, but to approach things and be transparent and consistent with what you're doing. I've rambled through a lot of stuff so far. Is any questions or any contradictions to anything I've said? Okay. Um, One of the things I realized when I got involved with the recruiting for Goldman Sachs for about 5 years and running their global hiring program is how you accept an offer or how you decline an offer can make a big difference in terms of how you're received when you join the company. So most of the time we're concerned about how to decline offers, but I think it's also important to know how to accept, and to accept as enthusiastically and as quickly as you honestly can. And I think that's really important. In addition, on declining offers, it's the same thing. If you're going to decline an offer, it's good to get as quickly as you can to the people and decline the offer so that they can be freed up to use by another student. I think that there's sometimes inadequate attention to the fact that the offers, you holding on to an offer is both a waste of time of the company, but also limits the other students at BYU who might have a chance at getting the offer if you're not intending to. So one would be reneging. Does everyone know what that means? Show of hands, anyone not know what that means? Okay, let me just define it a little bit. It's essentially saying accepting an offer of company A, and then when company B shows up and it's really the company you'd like to be with, you go back and decline the first offer and accept the second. And this invariably every year there's 2 or 3 people who do this. At the firm where I was, Goldman, if they found out the student did that to accept a Goldman offer, they would withdraw the Goldman offer. So they didn't want anyone accepting an offer from their company to join their company who had reneged on another firm. And again, this is a constant issue, and I just want you to be careful about it because it again reflects so much on a basic characteristic that's very attractive for BYU students, and that is to be straightforward, to be humble, to be hungry, to be transparent, as opposed to sneaky. A couple years ago, a friend of mine was a BYU student was on a training floor in Manhattan, and one of the managing directors of the firm came walking by them as he was talking with another one of his friends, and he said, the managing director said, "What are you guys doing?" And one said to the other, "Well, we had questions about what happened in the market today, and we're checking with each other and trying to figure out what happened." And the senior guy, the MD, said, "All you're doing is swapping ignorance. You should talk with somebody who actually knows what's going on." And one of the problems that we have from time to time is students counseling with students, both of whom don't really understand the implications of offers, and then they make mistakes. And so what we'd like you to do is think about that. If you ever have any questions or concerns, come and talk with Tina and I, and we'll try and figure out a way that you can accomplish what you need to without misrepresenting yourself or BYU. And let me just pause for a moment. I'm sorry I'm kind of halting. My medicine is kicking in slowly today, and I appreciate your patience in dealing with me until it kicks in, and then I'll be as bad as normal as opposed to worse. No. Just depends on how it dissolves. The other question we were asked is negotiating terms. And my impression is almost never is it a good idea, or does it work to try and renegotiate? Unless you're working with a small company where they don't really have any standard policies. Bigger companies that are hiring more people have standard policies, and unless you have something really exceptional on your resume, doesn't really make sense to negotiate or try and create new terms. Deadline extensions, have any of you had good luck in requesting these this year? Has anyone tried? What happened?
So mine was with Boeing, and I asked for a station extension. Well, I had talked to someone else who had an internship for them, and he said that they gave extensions. And so I said, basically, I'm going through a couple
Sounds great. Sounds like you worded that very well. Very nicely done. Anybody else? Please.
It was actually last year. I had an offer for a law firm in New York, and I was beginning the process with a real estate firm. And I said something very similar to what she said. Maybe it wasn't as nuanced as well worded as that, but I basically said I'm beginning the process with somebody else, but I'm really excited about your offer as well. I just wanted to be able to look at all of my options. Would you mind if I get back to you? I asked them the same thing they did.
Okay. This one is very much determined by how you do it, not just by the fact that you're doing it. If everyone knows that, one firm is interviewing on a Thursday and the next one's coming back to town on the next Thursday, and you ask for a week extension or a little bit more, people, recruiters are pretty smart. They connect the dots, and they say, okay, you want to get an extension from company A so that you can have more time to wait for an interview with company B. I don't think there's no problem with asking for time. But just be thoughtful like you were in your comments when you asked someone about it, because that came across very well. Did you accept the offer that was dead?
So we accepted, and then I actually did not take their offer.
Okay. Because see, that I would put that, my view as, if anyone asked for an extension, I would just essentially cross them off. So, there's nothing official about that, but that's what I figure would happen. So if you're asking for extra time, try and make it not sound quite that bad. And yours is great. Anyone else ask for extension and succeed or fail? Please.
I failed. I asked for a couple more weeks. Same exact thing. Just keep all the options on the table. And they said that, sorry, but that they
Okay.
weren't able to do so.
Okay, it's a tricky thing. It's like reneging on offers and making exploding offers. Sometimes you probably feel like the companies are manipulating you and they think you're manipulating them. And I think that's why it's really good to just be very candid and straightforward and not get involved in any of that nonsense. Because what you don't want is to accept an offer from a company where it turns out they had wished maybe you had traded away and that they didn't have to deal with you. How about salary, relocation, other kind of benefits? Anybody successful in negotiating those? Okay. Please. Where's back? Yeah.
What would be your advice on, like, say that you have an internship and you said you want to be relocated, right? What would be your advice on that? Like, with the same company?
Okay. I think it's once you get an offer, it's a great time to bring it up. But remember what you may have said previously along the way. That if you told them you really wanted to be in New York or really wanted to be in LA, just keep that in mind because they'll probably remember. But I think there's a lot of things that you can negotiate after you get the offer. And they may not be monetary things, but they can be other things. It's a good time because they've demonstrated their good intent, that they're interested in you, and so it could work out really well. Okay, now, those are all my grandkids. They're arriving at my house in about 5 minutes, so I'll see you later.
Let's go to the second one. Did you, Nathan? Okay, so we have Nathan Tanner with us. I'm really excited about this because I've had a lot of fun with LinkedIn. I've helped a few of you find people, and it's just it's a great tool. And when I heard that Nathan would be willing to present to you today, I was so grateful. Nathan actually, he graduated from BYU, as you can tell. He was the IBC president when he was here. So he knows what you're all going through. And I'm going to actually let Nathan finish introducing himself, but let's give him a round of applause. You're welcome.
I'm going to see if this works. Okay. Maybe a little loud. Okay. Is it too loud? Is it pretty loud? Okay. How can I adjust this? What's up in here? Okay. How's that? Is that better? That's better? Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. I'm excited to be able to present to you today. We'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn, building a network. But first I wanted to tell a story. When Kim was talking about recruiting, it reminded me of an experience I had. Might have been about the point that you guys are at right now. It was an interview I had in Salt Lake City with Fidelity Investments. First real professional interview that I had before, and I didn't really know how to prepare. Probably wish I would have reviewed some of these things. Showed up to the interview, a couple questions in, was asked about, tell me about a time where you showed initiative. And my mind just went completely blank. I couldn't think of what to say. And a story popped into my head, but I thought, no, that's really not a good story to share. Let's think of something else. And then eventually it got so awkward that I was just sitting there silently. I thought, okay, I'll share this first story. So I shared that a couple weeks before, there was a girl in one of my classes I thought was cute, and I really wanted to ask her out, but I was so nervous, I was anxious, I didn't know what to do, didn't know how to approach her, and so I got up the courage, asked her out, she said yes, and that was a time that I showed initiative. And I could tell as I finished this story, I wasn't going to get the internship, because they both looked at me like they were crazy, and in fact, one of them was not a BYU grad, not LDS, and I could tell she was thinking, who is this weirdo, and who decided that he was going to get an interview today? And so I share that story because we all are probably at different levels at this point. Some of us are just trying to figure things out. Others may be a little bit more experienced. But regardless, these are all skills that can be learned through practice and through preparation. And so, anyway, just to run through the bio here a little bit. I was an undergrad here, 2008 graduate, but a couple of years before, I think I was about a sophomore, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. As you can tell, I didn't really have a clue. So I went to a club event. There were multiple clubs there. The investment banking club was one of them. Didn't know what they did, so I walked up, started talking to the president of the club, and said, "Oh, so what's investment banking?" And he kind of flippantly said, like, "Oh, you should know what investment banking is, right? Do you want to do research or sales and trading or M&A?" And I was just like, "Yeah, those sound good. M&A, probably." In fact, I didn't even know what M&A stood for. And he told me, unless you have like perfect grades or unless you have like awesome connections in the industry, the chance of you getting a job there are pretty low. And so I left that event thinking, okay, cross that off my list. But then decided to go back to another club event later on, kind of just to prove myself a little bit, like, who is this random guy to tell me what I can and can't do? And so I went back to the club event, started learning more about it, and what was really critical for me was taking a trip to New York. There was a professor who was here who led a trip to New York. At the time, there were only about 10 of us who were undergrads, and it exposed me to a world that I hadn't seen before. I knew nothing about Wall Street or finance, and decided on that trip that that was what I wanted to pursue. And so I think regardless of, as I said earlier, regardless of where you're at, please make the investment, put in the time to figure out what you want to do and the path that you want to pursue, because you're very intelligent, you're very bright. You wouldn't be here if you weren't, and those are definitely possibilities for all of us. So anyway, I intern at Lehman Brothers, start there full time, 2008. I don't know if anyone remembers what happened in 2008 to Lehman Brothers. Anybody? Yeah. They went under, yes. Largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. And I was a part of that about a month into the job. And that was awesome until I was then out of a job. And that was not awesome. I spent about 4 months looking for a job, ended up at Piper Jaffray doing similar work, working with technology companies on IPOs and mergers and acquisitions. Figured out what M&A was at that point, thankfully. And then a couple years later, I transitioned to a private wealth management role at Merrill Lynch. And then in this position was really when I took a step back and thought, okay, where do I want to go long term? And someone encouraged me to think about 3 things. And I'd encourage you all to think about those things, okay? What are you good at? What do you want to do? And what are the market realities? Or, can you get paid to do that? And as I thought about that and reflected and talked to a lot of different people, these conversations were really helpful. I ended up deciding to pursue HR, a natural transition from investment banking, right? The most coveted place that you can work within an organization. Not really, totally joking about that. But for me, I felt like given my background and my interests and the skills that I developed, I could make a really big impact in HR. Because people who were normally going to HR weren't data-driven and didn't have those skills. And I really wanted to work in technology and work for a high-growth tech company. And joined LinkedIn, had a great experience, and here we are today. So here's the agenda. We'll just jump right into it. Building a killer LinkedIn profile, a little bit on networking, some things to avoid on LinkedIn and how to make the most of LinkedIn, and then we'll have some time for questions. So, can I get someone to read this? Maybe just yell this out loud. Yeah. It's no longer enough to simply have a solid resume. Students now need a professional online presence.
Now, you've probably heard something like this before. Resumes are still important. LinkedIn hasn't killed the resume yet, but it's important really to build an online profile. And LinkedIn is critical for that. And just wanted to share 2 quick stories on that. The first is my brother-in-law, Scott Stanley. Here's just a quick summary of his profile. You can tell he has 33 connections, doesn't have a picture, and he's a car mechanic, okay? But somebody found his profile, as limited as it is, and he was able to get hired on as a mechanic for a corporate fleet and almost double his hourly rate, which he was getting paid, which was awesome. Another example too, my younger brother, Jordan, Big Four accounting. He was there for about 1.5 years, wasn't sure if he wanted to stay there. Anyway, spent a lot of time refreshing, updating his profile, and Amazon recently reached out to him, interviewed for a position, and recently accepted there. And so there's power to just being on LinkedIn, regardless of how complete your profile is, but there's even greater power by following the steps that we're going to talk about today. So, 10 steps. Can I shut this off? I just hit the podium button. Okay, 10 steps to a killer profile. Good question. Who already has a LinkedIn profile? I assume it's almost everybody. Okay, cool. So rather than just doing a step-by-step of, okay, add a picture, add this, I'm going to go through one of my friends' profiles
and highlight. Hopefully you can't see my password here as I log in. Okay. Kyle Grubman. He's currently an MBA student at the University of Michigan, but I thought he had a really good profile to look at. First of all, picture. Okay. Profiles that have a picture are viewed 7 times more often than profiles that don't. On your picture, you probably all have a picture. Make sure that it's just you in it. You probably have a very cute boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse, but this is an opportunity to showcase you. So ensure that it's just you. Make sure that it matches the industry you're trying to work in as well. That's important. He also works for a technology firm, works with LinkedIn, and so business casual is probably appropriate for him. If you're planning to go on Wall Street, probably a suit and tie works out. Also, if you're going to work in tech but going to be an engineer, maybe a t-shirt's fine. Just make sure you're catering to the industry you're in. Next, his headline right here. The default will probably just say, for all of you, BYU student or something like that. Take the opportunity to update. Has anyone made a unique headline before? Okay, so it sounds like most probably just use the default, which isn't a problem. But this is a really good opportunity to share what you're studying and what you're focusing on. So if everyone's studying finance here, it could be finance undergrad pursuing investment banking positions or pursuing research opportunities or things like that. The more people who know what you want to do, the better. The next, I'll take a look at his summary here. I'm kind of conflicted about the summary. I mean, it's great to if you really know what you want to do, absolutely. It's an opportunity to showcase your background. It's like the headline, but a little bit more detailed. Some of the skills that you might have, what you're looking for, how you can add value to an organization. But if you're going to be pursuing a lot of different opportunities and you're still kind of figuring things out, maybe hold off on a summary or try to keep it a little bit more generic because you don't want your summary saying one thing and then you're interviewing for a position that's completely different. The publishing platform here is really a unique opportunity for people to share, to become a thought leader, to share. If you're interested in research and you want to become a research analyst, maybe share an overview of some of the work that you've done or some insights that you've learned. That can be really helpful. The next is experience. I don't know if there's that much to talk about here. I think you've all done that before. The more information that you can provide, the better. Education as well, opportunity to share activities, groups that you're in. Here he has all the clubs that he's in. Skills. People tend to have conflicted or a mixed opinion about skills. Has anyone been endorsed for a skill on LinkedIn by someone like they hardly even know, or you definitely know that person knows nothing about your valuation skills? I know I had my stake patriarch, who I haven't spoken with since I was like 14 or 15, endorsed me for valuation, and I was like, okay, cool, but this doesn't mean anything. And so it's tough. I think generally speaking, the skills that you have signal to your network and future employees that you do have those skills. No one's going to look and say, oh, Kyle, he has management as a skill. I better hire him as a manager. But what I would advise on here is you can go in and customize the skills that you have in there. I think by default it just ranks them usually by the number of endorsements you have. But I would list them in order of what's most important to you. So for instance, training is really important to Kyle, but he's been endorsed for startups more frequently.
A couple more points, and then you feel free to ask just general LinkedIn questions. Other publications you can share. If you've given a really good PowerPoint for a class, feel free to share that. If you've been filmed presenting for a course or a project, post that. The more you have on there, the better. Courses can be listed, etc. You can follow companies on LinkedIn. You can add to groups. All those things. Okay. What questions do you have on the profile? Yes. I would still put those first, because what happens a lot of the time, and I don't know the exact algorithm, but when someone clicks on your profile, they'll see, okay, does this person have these skills? And typically what I see, the ones that are listed at the top of your skills are the ones that are going to be popping up. So the higher you put those skills, the more frequently you'll be endorsed for them. Yeah. Any other questions on the profile? Okay, let's jumping into networking then. Never Eat Alone. Has anyone read this book before? Anyone familiar with the book at all? This book did more for me for networking, I think, than anything else. Since I was interested in pursuing Wall Street positions, I think it's changed now, but back then there were very few investment banks coming to recruit on campus. And so I learned very early on, if I wanted to work there, I needed to learn how to network. But how do you learn how to network? And so there were a lot of really, really good tips in this that were helpful. I'll probably just touch on maybe a couple. The first one here, build your network before you need it. Why do you think, just to shout out, why do you think that's important? Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you. And when I was going through the networking process and reaching out to people, I often heard that most professionals hear students reaching out to them usually when they're in their senior year and it's time to find a job and they need a full-time job. And at that point, people usually can't do that much and they're far less willing to help you out. But if you reach out a year in advance, and rather than the approach of, I need a job, instead taking, can I get some advice? Would you be willing to share 15 minutes of your time and let me ask questions? People are far more willing to help. And so starting early, I think, and building those relationships is really, really important. And I'll share these slides on Learning Suite as well as some additional information that Keith Ferrazzi shared in his book. But here are a handful of other ones. I think being audacious as well is a big one. A friend of mine, his name is David. This was back when Bear Stearns, like when Lehman existed, when Bear Stearns existed, he was looking for investment banking internships, and he emailed the CFO of Bear Stearns. And I don't know how he got his email address, probably just guessed by the alias, and emailed him saying that he was looking for an internship, asked him if he could help out. That email got forwarded to somebody in HR who I'm sure thought, oh, this is coming from the CFO. This must be a candidate we should interview. And he ended up getting brought in, interviewed for the position, got the offer. So I'm not saying, go and email the top executives of all these companies you want to work at, but be audacious. Take some risks. Maybe you don't get it, but it's usually worth a chance. We'll jump into that. So lastly, making the most of LinkedIn. Has anyone used the alumni tool before? I'll quickly open it up real quick. So if you're on your LinkedIn profile at the top and hover over connections and then find alumni, you can then screen companies by where you want to live. So let's say I'm really interested in the Bay Area, where you're interested in working. Let's say Google, why not? And you're interested in finance. Okay, so let's see. Do we have anyone in finance? One person in finance. Okay, so there's one person who's in my network who covers all of those. This is a really, really great tool if location's important or function's important, and I'd really encourage all of you to check that out. It can also be used as well on other universities. So if let's say Utah is really where you want to be, and maybe you've reached out to all the BYU connections you have, maybe, just maybe, you want to reach out to people at the University of Utah. You can do that here. You can screen by dates, and then just do a general search. Strongly encourage everyone to check that out. If you go to linkedin.com/studentjobs, it's another resource to find positions as well. And best practices. Let's talk about that. Best practices on LinkedIn. Covered this a little bit early, but making sure that all of the parts in your LinkedIn profile are aligned is really, really important. You don't want one part saying, I'm a finance student interested in Fortune 500 companies, and another point saying I'm interested in Wall Street banks. Just ensure that that's there. Following influencers. So LinkedIn has 100 or 200 influencers that are on there, a lot of good thought leaders. Jamie Dimon writes several posts on LinkedIn. A lot of finance executives are on there. Know what they're saying. That becomes really, really valuable if you're in an interview setting and you can say, oh, yeah, I read a post from Jamie Dimon about what's going on at JP Morgan. What did you think about that? And it really changes the discussion that you can have. Another one is activity broadcasts. I'll go to my profile here. So right now, when you make changes to your profile on the home page, it's like kind of a Facebook stream of all the activities that people in your network are doing. You can make it's normally set yes, so if you make any changes to your profile, it notifies your network of what you're doing. If you're going to be making a lot of changes to your profile, probably over the course of several days, consider just saying no, so it doesn't publish to all of your contacts. Being courteous and respectful. That's one thing. As you're reaching out to people, remember that nobody owes you, nobody owed me anything, okay? Even if they're alums of the program, some people make the mistake of taking an approach of, they're a BYU grad, they'll help me out, or say, hey, can you help me find a job? Just in short, and I know you've heard this before, be kind, be respectful, be flexible as you're trying to set up appointments, and it'll be really valuable. Leveraging profiles of people you respect. A lot of you are probably doing this already, but as I was building my profile, I looked at people who graduated a year before me, people who were doing well in the industry, and followed what this guy's advice. Good artists copy, great artists steal. A lot of the components of my LinkedIn profile have been ripped off from other people and then just kind of changed and massaged a little bit to match my purpose. It sounds a little bit wrong, but leveraging other people's work can quickly help you get up to speed. And then lastly, writing personalized connection requests. If there's one advice, I always say this when talking about LinkedIn, if there's one thing you walk away from, unless it's your best friend or unless it's someone you know very, very well, when you're inviting someone to LinkedIn, please, please use a personalized connection request, okay? And so what, so let's, no, I won't do an example. Oh, and what happens, a lot of people invite people from their phones. Just know that when you do that, you can't then add a personalized message. And so just remember, if it's something you want, if it's someone you want to add a personalized message, just make sure you do it from your desktop, from their profile, and that can be helpful. I get invitations a lot from people, and it's like, I think I've met this person before, I'm not sure. But if people send me a personalized request, I'll respond to them. Yeah? So they see that in their email usually, yeah. And so that's one thing. They may just see that you added them on LinkedIn, but in their email they'll get the connection request. So or if they dig deeper and go into the messages section, then they can see the contents of the invite. There was one other good thing I was going to say about connection requests. Any other questions on that? It'll probably come as I go to the next slide. Okay. Common LinkedIn mistakes. Like a resume, a profile that's full of typos, just triple check, make sure that it's accurate. Profile that doesn't have a headline or summary. Maybe not an actual mistake, but take a look at it and see if that's something that makes sense for you. Picture that doesn't fit the workplace culture. Picture that includes another person. Stalking people without being anonymous. I don't know if you know that, but you can check who's viewed your profile. Have people seen that before? Normally it's not a big deal that people see that you viewed their profile, but let's say you're going to be interviewing with Kim Smith. He's at Goldman Sachs still, and for the week before, you're really interested in learning about his background, and every day or so, you check out his profile. He may keep getting these notifications that you have viewed their profile. And so I say this not to say that everyone should be marked as anonymous, but just know that you can do that. And so you can find that if you go to your profile under privacy settings and manage, and I'm not gonna log in again, but hover over your picture in the top right and go to privacy settings, and you can change that there. Okay, inviting people from your phone, talked about that. Twitter, Facebook, normally not used a ton in a social networking environment or for a professional network, but following companies and executives are really important. Following relevant professionals also can be helpful, because as they send tweets, maybe they share articles that they've read on their industry, their company. Replying to them, engaging with them can be a great step in beginning that relationship. And then also having a presence on Twitter and tweeting relevant articles and updates that you see can also help strengthen your network. Facebook, just make sure that your profile is not you with a red cup at a party. Normally not a problem at BYU, but I have come back to interview students before, and I always pull up their profile picture on Facebook just to see how they present themselves. It's never been an issue before, but employers will likely do the same, and sometimes you can share posts on there as well. Okay, just lastly before we turn it over to Q&A, I ended up writing, I'm in the process of writing a book right now about the career experiences I've had as a young professional and going through the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy and getting laid off and setbacks that I've had, and most importantly, lessons that I've learned. And it's really targeted at college students and young professionals. And so if you're interested in and reading some of this, or would love to, feel free to give me an email. Happy to send a few chapters and get your input. It probably won't be completed for a couple months. Feel free to add me on Twitter, and university.linkedin.com is a great resource to figure out how to strengthen your profile and build your network. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to formal questions. Yeah. So the question is, how do companies go about searching for students? A couple ways. Some of them are through skills. Surprisingly enough, they'll actually search for people based off of skills that they've listed on their profile. There is a recruiter. So another separate question is, how does LinkedIn make money? Partly through advertisements, but the majority of revenue comes from employees paying for a premium style account that's for recruiters that costs a couple $1,000s for an account. And so they can screen by skills, by experiences that you've had, by universities, by graduation dates. There are a lot of different tools that they can screen for that. And so the more complete a profile you have, the more likely that you'll be picked up in those screens. So for my younger brother, it was a BYU grad who had previously worked in accounting, and he was looking for accounting professionals because he knew the skill set that they had to bring on to Amazon. And I think my brother-in-law, who was the mechanic, it was probably just a screen by job title, and found him that way. Yeah. Yeah. So I actually haven't. I haven't spent as much time on, here, let me back up a little bit. I haven't spent as much time on this resource, actually, because for me, this didn't exist when I was going through recruiting. But yeah, you can get on here and look for a type of job. So finance, and it'll list all of the companies out there that are looking to hire finance students. I don't know if it's more detailed than that. Yeah.
The alumni committee you're on, that's not all your friends, that's just alumni of BYU that say that they're from BYU.
Correct. Yeah. And so it'll show there'll be two different groups on the alumni page. There'll be those who are alumni, which you are actually first degree connections with. You've connected with them, and then it'll also show second degrees and beyond. And so at that point, you can figure out. By hovering, I'll go back to the alumni page because I think that's really valuable. Okay, so let's go with Phoenix in finance and JP Morgan. Okay. Where's a good example? Okay, here we go. So David Richardson is a good person. He was a 99 grad. Because it shows the connect option, I'm not connected to him, but I hover over this little Venn diagram here, and I have two connections in common. And so reaching out to people, getting those people to introduce me to that person would probably be the first way. Sometimes what I will do, and this tends to be a little bit more aggressive, but I think that's where being audacious comes in. I'll just hit, this is someone I really want to talk to. We don't have any mutual connections. I'll hit connect. Oops, that's definitely not what I wanted to do. Okay. Maybe he was an alum, it sent that automatically. Anyway, maybe I'll have a new friend by the end of the night. We'll see. So I thought by clicking on that the profile box or the connection, the message box would pop up, and there I would include, David, we haven't met before, but I'm really interested in learning about your experience at JP Morgan. Would you be willing to take a few minutes to connect at one point? And so sometimes at this point, people will just accept you and not respond. At that point, then I would send them a message directly on LinkedIn, or you can access their contact information and send them an email that way. And so that's, if you're feeling scrappy, I think that's a great way to reach out to people. Definitely didn't go as planned right there. Any other questions? Okay.